good evening, everyone. My name is Eunice Kim, and I'm Assistant Professor of Classics here at Furman University. I will be serving as the moderator for tonight's conversation about careers in the nonprofit field. We have a really exciting panel of professionals who will speak about how they got into their career path, offer advice about how to pursue your dream job, and answer any other questions that you and the audience might have tonight. So just to start off with brief introductions of everyone. First, we have Kimball Vincent Dobbins, who graduated from Furman in 2016 with a degree in classics, my major, although I was not yet here. But she's now the program coordinator for the College Excellence Program at the Aspen Institute in Washington, D.C. Next, we have Lee Hendrickson, a 2007 Furman grad with a BA in psychology. She is now currently the Chief Operating Officer for Wellspring Living in Atlanta, Georgia. And finally, we have Travis Wharton, who was a 2007 grad at Claflin University, not too far away, I believe, and is currently the Director of Education Economic Mobility at United Way of Greenville County. So a really exciting, diverse group of career professionals in the nonprofit sector. So the way this will work is I will just direct a lot of the conversation for about the first 30 to 45 minutes with a couple of pre-formed questions. And at that point, I will open up the floor to anyone in the audience. If you have questions that I was not able to address, please feel free to put them in the chat and I can read them aloud and make sure that your questions are answered. So just to start off, I'd just love to hear more about what you do and how you got to where you are today. And this is a question for everyone on the panel. Were there any detours and what were those detours like? So just to start off, Lee, could you perhaps explain your general pathway?
Sure. So I'll kind of start at the beginning. I grew up in a small town in South Georgia. Our population for our town was about the same size as the student population at Furman. So I was thrilled to leave the farm and come to the big metropolis of Greenville for school at Furman. For me, as soon as I took my first psych course, I kind of fell in love with that major and that helped to define my path. Also had an opportunity to play rugby while I was at Furman. We had a women's club rugby team. So that was 4 years for me, some leadership experience there as senior captain. And that all kind of combined with the psychology piece. I had an interest in human resources, sports experience, had a chance to study abroad and developed an interest in the sports industry. So my path started in HR, but not in sports, so kind of navigated after a few years, had an opportunity to do both of those things, to kind of bring both of those passions together. And through my sports experience was able to kind of grow in my career, and then pivoted this past job change. I was able to help host the College Football National Championship here in Atlanta, and then Super Bowl 53, which was wonderful, and had out of that experience a relationship with the nonprofit that I now help to lead. So it's been an incredible experience. I managed to pick up an evening MBA from Georgia Tech along the way. So was able to kind of pair the liberal arts degree from Furman with a more technical graduate degree, which has been wonderful. I will say no unexpected detours per se, but I never could have predicted my path. I think that's something that was a huge takeaway for me, coming out of school, focusing on that first job, just being okay taking it one step at a time and looking at each career decision as just the next step, what could kind of keep my options open or what could kind of nudge me toward, that sense of purpose and that progressive growth. So Been fortunate. No detours, but definitely some turns in the road that have kept it fun.
Well, wonderful. And very briefly, could you explain what you do in your capacity as COO, sorry, of Wellspring Living?
Absolutely. So my current role in operations is to support really the business side of the nonprofit. I mean, we have an incredible organization with a fantastic mission to help transform the lives of youth and women who are victims of sexual exploitation. And my job is to support the staff and the organizational structure that supports our participants, those victims, and helps them to lead fulfilling, healthy lives. So, day to day, that looks like being the go to stretching into our finance and accounting, our human resources, our IT, our logistics and facilities, and just overall leadership for the organization. The strategy piece is kind of important there, but as an organization of about 130 employees, we have to do both, right? So I find myself doing a lot of strategic things, and then I have the day to day, kind of tactical pieces that have to be taken care of as well. So a little bit of both, lots of departments of one to support and supplement.
Yeah, that's a lot of valuable work in there. I'm going to pick up on a lot of these threads in just a moment. For now, though, I'd like to shift gears to Travis. Could you explain your general pathway and how you find your new role and what you're doing now?
Yeah, that pathway is very zigzaggy. That's how I would describe it. I'm a Greenville native, but honestly, the detour would have been, right after high school. I didn't really plan on going to college. It didn't seem like it was an option financially. Um, but I was a saxophonist, had been playing for 6 years, and got into a last minute audition and ended up getting a full scholarship to college. And so that changed everything, changed the whole pathway. So I was a music education major. I taught middle school and high school band for about 4 years. And really got interested in the whole idea of education overall and how school systems work. And decided to pursue a graduate degree in school administration and supervision at Clemson University. So in the meantime, I started teaching elementary music, which was a really great experience because I was teaching preschoolers as well. So you go from teaching seniors how to play concertos to teaching 3-year-olds how to clap on beat, which is the best experience I had in the education career by far. And so moving from there, going into school administration, where I was a high school principal for 2.5 years, was drafted to help start a charter high school here in Greenville called Next High School. I was there for 2 years and left school administration to move into this nonprofit arena. And I've been here for a little over 2 years, and I started doing some consulting work, economic mobility consulting work in Spartanburg, just building connections and networking there, and was asked to do it. Never done it before, really didn't even know what economic mobility was. But I engaged my curiosity and learned as much as I could, and it became a passion of mine. From there, people in Greenville caught wind that a Greenville native kid was up in Spartanburg doing some work, and they wanted to have that here in Greenville. And so United Way pitched me the idea of becoming invested in the organization and figuring out how it could be an asset to the work that United Way has been doing for decades here in Greenville County. And so that role of Director of Education and Economic Mobility pulls on both of the career pathways that I've taken on so far, with the education background and understanding how school systems work and understanding the myriad of elements that play into students and families' educational experiences in public school systems. But the economic mobility aspect encapsulates every single bit of that and more, in looking at the economic mobility narrative of families and of individuals and what that looks like in different communities and what are those elements that help to create on-ramps for success for individuals, and those other elements that create barriers for many individuals, and many of those intergenerational barriers. And so my work is largely in analyzing what those on-ramps and barriers are, looking at our organization and finding out how we can best invest in nonprofit organizations in our community who are doing the hard work on the ground, and continuing to inform our donors and all of those partners about what those issues are and how we can best invest to create systems change so that those barriers and on-ramps are offered to everyone in the most equitable way possible.
That's another really exciting field that you're working in. And as you said, it sounds like education, the shift from education to, say, the nonprofit field is dramatic, but really I'm struck by kind of the shared through line of the fact that you are so engaged with communities more broadly. And so I'm going to return to this. But finally, Kimball, can you explain your general career path and what work you're involved in?
Definitely. So I graduated Furman in 2016. I was a classics major, and I always knew that I probably wouldn't pursue classics post grad. I studied it because I loved it and I really enjoyed it. And so while I was at Furman, like most students, I was super involved and very engaged in student life. I was in a sorority, and I was really involved in the admissions office. I was a tour guide and a concierge, and I interned there, and I really loved it. And so I didn't realize that you could actually study students, basically. And one of the admission counselors, Allison Brown, was like, yeah, you can get a degree in this, and then this is kind of where you go. And so my junior year, decided that I was going to become an admission counselor, and I wanted to be dean of admissions, and that was my whole goal. So I went to graduate school after I graduated at Clemson University, and I got a degree, a master's of education in counselor education, but student affairs focused. And I realized, though, while I was in graduate school, that that wasn't quite the path that I actually was going to take. And I didn't really know what to do after graduate school. I knew I still was really passionate about higher education, but I didn't quite know where I fit in anymore, and where my interests lie, and where I wanted to really cultivate my passions. And so I had done an internship at the Greenville Health System, I guess now Prisma Health, in their student affairs department, and got pretty well connected, and ended up in the Clemson University School of Health Research after I graduated from grad school, working with health researchers and scientists from Furman, Clemson, and USC. And I enjoyed the people, and I enjoyed kind of what I was doing, but it wasn't my passion. And so I really kept coming back to how much I was passionate about student access and equity within higher education. And ultimately found the Aspen Institute, and they had a coordinator position open, which I applied for and got. So the Aspen Institute is a large nonprofit with a lot of different programs within. And so I'm in the College Excellence program that's dedicated to improving student success outcomes in mainly community colleges. And it's my niche, and I love it. And this is only my second big girl job, for lack of a better term. I had a graduate assistantship in grad school, but this is my second job, full-time job, I guess. But I really love it, and it's exciting to be on this panel today with everybody who's doing such great work.
Yeah, great. Kimball, I'm particularly struck by the fact that your degree and everyone else on the panel this evening does not necessarily translate literally into what you're doing now, right? And so I'm just curious if you can reflect on how your educational experiences as a liberal arts student, right, can and should connect to your employment. If you have any perspective on that.
Oh yeah, because I'm sure that the students who are on the call, you know this. People say, well, what are you going to do with that degree? Or why are you doing that? Why aren't you a business major? Or why aren't you a engineer? Or whatever it is. And I definitely faced that studying Latin and Greek. But to that, I say post-grad, it's important to have passions, and it's important to cultivate those passions. You learn as a liberal arts student, and especially at Furman, you learn how to think critically. You're pushed to think outside of what you know, and you're very much challenged. And you're kind of forced to grow, and that's something that's super important to keep up with and to take into your post-grad life. You're able to draw parallels and make connections, and that's very relevant in the workforce. And I think that you, especially as a Furman student, you learn how to have competing priorities and how to balance those. And so you might be on a sports team and still be taking 20 hours or 16 hours of classes. You learn how to prioritize things, and all of those are so important in the workforce. You're going to have lots of projects to get done. You're going to have lots of meetings and deadlines to meet. And so I think that just the experience of being a liberal arts student, being at Furman, does prepare you for the workforce and for after Furman. It's just all about how you sell yourself and how you present yourself in your resume and cover letters and things like that.
Great. And Travis, you had a similarly dramatic shift, I would say, and perhaps you wouldn't have necessarily predicted that from your early career in music you would be in the position that you hold now. And so, given that perspective, do you have any advice about the types of experiences that students should start targeting before they graduate? Just any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I would say, looking back over my education career, especially in the high school level, one of the things that was an aha moment for me is when we looked at our curriculum and we were trying to put students in a place where they could develop their own projects that were based off of their passions and their interests, that largely they had no idea what their passions or interests even were. We quickly understood that they were highly unskilled in understanding themselves and knowing what place they had in this world. They'd largely, over the course of their academic careers, never been asked those questions. And many times they hadn't been in a learning environment that actually cultivated authentic curiosity in something. Many times the things that students got involved with, they got involved with them because they were popular. And so that tends to translate into the post-secondary field of things that are popular are the ones that make you the most money, the ones that other people are doing, the things that might be easier or are deemed more challenging once you go into the workplace and you think that's going to garner all types of attention. People go into those areas because of reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with who they are as an individual. And so I think the first thing that most people need to get interested in is themselves. Who are you and what kind of value do you bring to the table? And if you aren't able to identify those things, then engage that genuine curiosity, engage that curiosity that leads to questions about who you are, where you are in your community, what type of place do you see you want to have impact, and where are those things that deserve change, who are those communities that deserve change? Because if you're going to get into philanthropy, the essence of all of it is that you have a passion for people. And so asking those authentic questions, first of all, and then following those interests and actually asking questions about them, finding opportunities that align with those interests. And so if there are internships and externships, volunteer opportunities, times to be able to go and visit and just cold call CEOs and COOs and program managers and all those, to just say, hey, I'm interested in what it is that you do. Can I learn more about it? Are there more opportunities for me to learn more about it? and just jumping in there and finding out what it is that you can bring value in. I think you asked Kimball a question about her post secondary experience and how it lends itself to value in the work that she does. And I think many college students need to understand that the college experience is one of many ingredients of the things that you will do in life, and it is it's false to believe that whatever it is that I major in is going to be my life. It's the thing that I'm going to do forever. It's the one value piece that anyone will be able to see in me. I work with very few people who are working in a field that is anywhere close to what they majored in college. It doesn't mean that that wasn't valuable to them. It was a part of the value that they bring to the table. And taking all of those interests, those passions, those experiences and perspectives makes them most valuable to our organization. And so I would say get interested. If you can't take out a piece of paper right now and write down 5 things that you are interested in and have questions about, then you have work to do. You have work to do. If you're not presenting value to yourself, you have some work to do before you can present value in this philanthropic ecosystem.
Travis, that's you. I'm going to have to borrow everything you said. I mean, that's really powerful wisdom there. I mean, just in simple terms, the way you said it, I think earlier, is cultivate an authentic curiosity. And that's more than just the college experience. I think that's a lifelong impulse that will continue to help everyone thrive, even outside of the academic setting. So I want to continue this in just a bit, because one way in which I believe students often do cultivate such curiosity is in the first kind of obvious choice they make in college, which is the major that you choose. Presumably you choose it because you were really interested in it. And so Lee, I'm just wondering, in your case, I'd love to hear a similar retrospective where, again, there is a bit of a gap between, say, psychology and your current position. But have you found any skills that you cultivated during your time in college that are really valuable in the work that you do now? And conversely, knowing what you do know now, are there any skills you wish that you had cultivated earlier when you were at Furman?
Yes. So it's interesting for me, on the psychology side, just kind of right there in my lane from a major standpoint. I very quickly knew I wanted to stay on the BA side of psychology. I liked industrial organizational. I really connected with that, kind of the human resources application. The clinical piece was interesting to me, but not kind of my path in a sense of what I do. And it's so interesting that I have been kind of led to an organization, and we're a faith-based organization. So I will say I was kind of, called there, where a lot of our staff members and a lot of the actual work we do is clinical psychology related. So my major not only helped me in my own career path with the work that I do, but it helps me now to connect better and have a deeper understanding of the organizational work that happens around me. So I think having that context is really helpful as people think through their majors, not only through the lens of what I'm doing or what I'm contributing, but what kind of organization do I want to be part of? What kind of culture or purpose or mission or product or service do I want to put out into the world? So you can be part of something like that without having to directly deliver it yourself. Little known fact about me, I was one course short of a double major, and that double major would have been philosophy. I had my final trimester at that time, down to the spring, and I had to choose, am I going to close out this double major and finish with my last philosophy course, or do I take the one business class, that was offered at the time to try to kind of dip my toe into that water, knowing that I'm going to go into HR and kind of start my career from a business standpoint. So I took the business course, and I'm so, so glad that I did. I think even that one class at Furman, being able to pair that with my other education, just gave me a better launching point to go into a business, and have a broader perspective again than my role, to understand just a little bit more about what it takes to operate an organization, how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. I started out in recruiting, so I got to be that person who could work with hiring managers and executives and the people who were really doing the stuff, to know more about what they were, about, what they were looking for, and bringing people into the organization who were a good fit. So I think for me, those skills, from just like a content standpoint, were really helpful, to get me started. A couple of things that also helped was, and I know this has been really challenging in the last year, I had an opportunity to study abroad while I was at Furman. And I would strongly encourage anyone who has that opportunity. It was a financial stretch for me, almost an impossibility, but was able to make it work. And that was one of the best experiences that I was able to have in my time at Furman, just gaining that perspective. I had never been out of the country before, so to go and live somewhere else for 3 months was just incredible. And it's something that I've still kind of carried with me to this day, both personally and professionally. Being able to have that kind of cultural comfort and openness to new experiences from a travel standpoint. I think just soft skills wise, Kimball really captured this really well of what it means to be a Furman, any Furman major, that liberal arts degree. We have the ability to dig deeper into the purpose behind our work, which not only helps us to stay fulfilled in our roles, but it also helps us to contribute more to those organizations. I think all along the way, I've been able to keep that curiosity authentic and ask good questions and connect the dots on anticipating needs and not waiting for somebody, to come and ask, but being really proactive and strategic. And that has paid off, I think, and helped me to accelerate my career growth faster than it probably would have happened had I just been content to, to do the responsibilities that were handed to me. I think for me, again, having that Georgia Tech graduate degree, I don't wish that I had gotten those skills earlier. I actually really appreciated having almost a decade of work experience before starting grad school and being able to layer that in simultaneously with my work, because I was able to apply what I was learning every single semester. I'd kind of reached a position of leadership and influence where I could incorporate, I could run a multiple regression and see if that, if we had gender inequities in our pay structure, or I could, look at marketing theory and apply that to the way that we kind of spread the word about our services. So that to me, I think is something that I didn't pick up so much at Furman. The technical skills, the calculus, foundation to some of the business practices that I've learned along the way, but that's okay. I think there's something to be said, like Kimball mentioned, there's something to be said for those big girl jobs and taking that time to gain experience and to learn and to contribute. And then after you've had a chance to contribute, to really decide what you want to learn next. If I had gone to grad school 2 years out, 5 years out, 7 years out, I would have gone to law school and my career path would have looked very different. But being able to gain experience and perspective and talk with others, other mentors who really got to know me as well, helped me to kind of make the right decision for the degree. And I don't know that I'll pick up another one. I think I'm okay for now. We'll see what happens in the next decade. But I think just staying open, to the skills and experiences that you want to have is important. Not feeling like you have to have it all figured out.
That's wonderful. I think for me, what I got out of that, especially, is how much, with the benefit of hindsight, you really value the choices you made and that you didn't need to launch directly into the technical skills and content that are perhaps required for your position. And so I want to continue that in just a second. But first, at the same time, I'd like to ask everyone here, um, if given the chance to talk to your 18-year-old self and 21-year-old or 22-year-old self, senior or freshman year, I mean, is there anything you would tell yourself to do differently? Any regrets that experience you never got a chance to do, that experience that you really regret doing? Or are those ups and downs all part of your growth as a person and professional?
I'll go first. That's a great question. I don't know that I would do anything super different. There's some classes I wouldn't have taken, for sure. But I think the study abroad piece is really key. I know that Furman has really made that an option for students. There's a lot of financial support, I think, or at least I hear that on the alumni end for students now. And I think once COVID is past us, it is really important to go see the world. I was able to do research abroad with the classics department. I went to Germany for 4 weeks, and it was just an awesome experience. I think if I could go back, I would have liked to have done a full semester away. That 3 months would have been awesome. But I think that honestly, what I would tell myself is to chill out and kind of relax, and it'll work out. It takes hard work. You can't be lazy about it, but it does fall into place, and stop worrying. I think that I worried a lot about where I would end up, and I could have saved myself some tears. So that's, I think, what I would tell my 18 and 22-year-old self.
Travis, or you wouldn't change anything differently? To some extent, I think that initial pearl of wisdom you shared is kind of something I for sure will pass on to later generations.
Awesome. Yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I think every experience that I've had is a part of this patchwork of learning that we all have the opportunity to get over the course of our lifetimes. One thing that I wish that I saw that I didn't see then was that my life and work were one and the same, and I needed to get rid of that idea of having the work-life balance, or this is my career and this is my life. I'm the same person no matter where I am. So how do I make sure as a whole person that I'm whole in whatever area I'm in? And so, sometimes that comes along with the expectations that life has these, this template, this prescribed pathway that it's going to happen. I had this particular major, so I'm going to land this particular job and live in this city and marry someone that looks like this and all that stuff. And that's not the way it happens. And, I had some really, really great things happen to me. I had some really, really bad things happen along that pathway. I got a full scholarship to college, and then I got cussed out by the principal of the school that I was at when I said I was going to grad school. You're like, you're not prepared. I got my first job as a high school principal when I was 29 years old. It was a super, super great thing. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my entire life. And I got fired from that job, and doing a really great job. There are things that are going to happen that don't align with what you think you should have based on your college experience or the background of your family and all of these things. And none of those things are predictable. So being ready to take the lessons out of those things. What is there to learn that I can take to tomorrow, into next month, into next year, into the next job, to the next relationship? Those are the things that I think create value over time, and to be able to gain wisdom and put that kind of in your life tool belt as you keep going, because you'll be able to apply that stuff as you move forward.
Wow. there's so much more I want to pick up on that. Very quickly though, Lee, do you have anything to share on that question? And then Travis, I want to follow up on something you said there.
All right, I'll have to be honest. My first thought of advice for my 18-year-old self was like, you're not going to be single forever, so it's going to be okay. Dating at Furman is a challenge, as I'm sure many people know. But fortunately, that all worked out in addition to everything else. So my spouse, if he can hear, is probably laughing because he's class of 0506, and we finally met the very last year. He had to stay for his master's just for us to meet. But there's that. So there is the personal side of things, but absolutely right. Along with what Kimball mentioned, not kind of having that needless worry or anxiety. And then what Travis mentioned too, not really having that desire to go backwards and change anything, because you never know where those little pieces are going to fit in your story. My first job, was a recruiting coordinator for an apartment management company. And I had no passion for apartment management, but it was a great family owned company. I learned so much and was able to grow with them just in the span of a couple years, and then move on to another opportunity. But it's so funny that now, again, with Wellspring Living, we have residential programs. So we actually own properties that need, tens of thousands of dollars of maintenance. And, I'm responsible for building those budgets and figuring out those resources. And I can still remember walking the properties with that senior vice president and having her pick up trash. And just the kind of mark that made on me about how you lead, and how you kind of serve by leading. I think that was a huge experience for me that just on paper, was that my first preference for a job? And is that how I was going to change the world right out of Furman? No, but I've been able to build on it since then. And so I'm glad that I didn't have a choice to choose that or something else, because I think that has come back around with such kind of benefits and perspective that I wouldn't have anticipated.
Yeah, what's really interesting is how you, Lee, and Travis and Kimball, each of you are able to isolate specific moments in your life that have really informed not just your personal continual growth, but also your ability to be effective in your position. So transitioning more practically to the career side, I'm wondering, are there specific characteristics or soft skills, hard skills that you would recommend are particularly essential you have found for the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, I can start us off. Writing is key in my position. So thankfully I had a lot of classes in college where it was mainly paper-based rather than test-based. So I really was able to hone my writing skills. Obviously, I took a first-year writing seminar as well, and that helped too. But my job, a lot of it is writing communications or drafting materials for senior members of our team. And you don't want to pass off a poorly written draft to them that they're just going to ultimately have to redo. So really hone your writing skills. I've talked to fellow coordinators on our team, and they admit that they are weaker writers because their college did not emphasize it. And I know it seems like a pain in the moment when you're in that first year writing seminar and you're churning out that next 10-page paper, but I promise it is so helpful to have strong writing skills. That's definitely the one that I use every day. So that's my advice.
I'm a big fan of critical thinking, slowing down and really doing an analysis of, thinking world of academia, they call it the epistemology, thinking about how you think and how you're processing information and understanding those filters that you have. In philanthropy in particular, a lot of the work that we do is taking all of the data, the narratives about our community and whatever the mission and vision is for our organization, and packaging that for our community to understand and then contribute to that effort. And many times that goes to our donors, because this work doesn't happen without money. People have to be paid to do this kind of stuff. Um, but many times the lack of critical thinking can have you create false narratives about what the community is actually going through. And sometimes you can have, organizations and people are raising lots and lots of money for issues that don't necessarily exist, or they're a little off target from what that actual community needs, because they're passionate about that thing, but they're not passionate about that community. That community has certain needs that are not being addressed. And they've tapped into a narrative that people who have, pretty heavy pockets are ready to give to. And so I think taking the time to really figure out, if you've identified what that thing that you're passionate about, finding that community where you fulfill that need for them, and making sure that you're not creating a philanthropic ecosystem that actually ends up kind of hurting a community rather than actually helping, and making sure that you're accompanying a community and bringing your best to the table while also helping to cultivate an environment where your community members can give the best back to you as well.
Critical thinking is so essential for that. Also, we talk about it often in an academic context, but it really is essential for just being not in addition to an effective employee, just like a good human being, I would say. So then, Lee, any additional thoughts?
Yes, and to all of those, I think for me, thoughtfulness came to mind, and it's both of those capacities. I think interpersonal thoughtfulness can't be undervalued within an organization for those who you're working with and those that you're serving. And then also organizational or structural thoughtfulness, the attention to detail, those hard skills of being able to compose the things that are in writing, being able to make a compelling argument, being able to kind of develop the skills that are needed for you to thrive in your role and be a strong contributor. That all takes thoughtfulness. One of the things that we do is like a little kind of summer book club at Wellspring Living with our innovation team, which is kind of our people managers and our functional managers. And a few years back, we read Patrick Lencioni's The Ideal Team Player, and that's something that we actually hire for. So we look for those three characteristics, which he kind of labels as humble, hungry, and smart. So having that humility to be thoughtful, and to be able to learn from others, having the hunger or the ambition or the drive to persist and to contribute. And then the smart piece, especially when it comes to people, having those intuitive interpersonal skills, which I think Furman is really exceptional at cultivating in us. While we're doing the hard work and being challenged and being stretched, we're also collaborating a lot, and we're learning together, and our professors actually know us. And I think that is so special. So that in and of itself is a skill builder, which is really valuable, especially in nonprofits.
So each of these characteristics, skills, broader traits that you all isolated, I take it, are these things you look for in entry-level applicants in your respective kind of fields? And is there anything else that you also look for when hiring someone? Is there anything else you would advise that current grads particularly pay attention to further honing and cultivating?
Cultural awareness and cultural competency is big for me. Part of the work that I help to co-lead at United Way is in our diversity, inclusion, and equity work. Just an understanding that everyone doesn't have the same background and experiences and understandings and worldviews, and knowing that does not and in any way mean that you all can't come together and create a super powerful organization together that really changes lives and impacts an entire community. But understanding that your willingness has to be followed with action and understanding. And I think that's, lead to Lee's point, that idea of humility, being teachable, realizing that you don't know everything. And as soon as you start feeling like that, that's when you're the least valuable to your organization. And so going in again with that curiosity and understanding that you have a myriad of perspectives and backgrounds in a space, and being teachable and allowing people to show you the way. It doesn't matter how many books you've read and how many, what your GPA was. And, I had a black friend, I understand. I went there Thanksgiving one time. It turns out no one cares. That was great. That was great that happened for you, but there's still more to learn. There's always more to learn. And being open to that creates a much richer life experience for that individual, to open yourself up to that and be wide open to what life has to offer, in this great gift of experience in community. So I think being humble and being open to those experiences and willing to learn, is something I look for anyone that we're hiring at United Way.
Yeah, interpersonal and to some extent, more importantly, intercultural competency is so essential. And I would say probably that's why Kimball and Lee, you strongly recommended that Study Away experience, because that is a valuable life experience in which you can further cultivate those areas of your ability to interact with others. Any other suggestions, Kimball, Lee? And I will just mention after this, we are coming up on, we have about 15 minutes left, and I just want to make sure that audience members have a chance to ask a question that I haven't actually addressed. So please feel free to write in the chat and I can read aloud. And otherwise, I do have like an infinite number of questions to ask our valuable panelists. But in the meantime, Kimball and Lee, any more additions?
I would just echo what Travis said. I'm still in the beginning phases of my career, and I'm in that entry level job still, and I've been in a couple of interviews hiring for my peers, my fellow coordinators, and when someone sticks out to me, it's because they have that curiosity to learn, they have that willingness and the openness. The willingness to be vulnerable with folks, and to just bring your full self to the table. And that it's hard. It's really hard. I'm not going to discount that. Travis, you hit the nail on the head with that. So I would just echo that, and just be open to experiences as well. I think a common theme throughout all of our stories is that we didn't necessarily know we would end up there, but we're here and we love it. And so just be open to what comes your way.
I would lose my HR badge if I did not say to be intentional about organizational culture. So I think almost as important, not quite, but almost as important as knowing yourself, and what you're passionate about and what's going to kind of fulfill you and how you can contribute, is knowing what kind of organizational culture is going to fit for you and motivate you. When that's kind of more of a natural sync, I think that it really sets you up for success. And when it's not a good fit, it can just be awful. It can be a really terrible experience. And I've been able to kind of see both. I kind of had that point in my career where I took a job for a growth opportunity, and the culture was a terrible fit for me. It was a large corporation. There was so much that was out of my control. It was overstructured. And I've found over time that for me, a smaller, more entrepreneurial, creative, close to the consumer, so to speak, organization works really well. So it doesn't have to have a nonprofit or for-profit label. It doesn't have to have a specific industry label, but really think about the corporate values, practices, structure that is important to you, research that, and then pursue opportunities that fit with that.
Really excellent advice as well. And just to follow up, do you envision any specific new challenges that you will have to face in your respective fields? Do you think it will continue to be the same challenges that you've faced thus far? Just another way of asking, what other things should graduating Furman students try to anticipate if they want to enter the nonprofit field?
I think it's a tough time in some respects with opportunities being somewhat limited. There's still being some lingering uncertainty. So I can only really speak from our organization's perspective. We have been so fortunate to not only continue providing the same services, but we grew last year. The services that we provide are even more needed now. And so we were able to really get out there and be aggressive with securing funding, with looking at opportunities, collaborative partnerships. So we are actually seeking staff to come on board and to fill positions. And I'm hopeful that other organizations, if they're not there yet, they're going to be getting there soon. So I think, just always keeping your options as open as possible, knowing what you want and being intentional about pursuing that, but not being so intentional that you're limiting yourself to some things that could be the right fit or the right kind of first step or next step to get you onto that ultimate path.
So Lee, oh, sorry, Travis, go ahead.
I was just going to say that COVID-19 definitely placed some challenges in front of the United Way last year. And, so it's kind of like that intricate patchwork again of good things and bad things. We annually usually dispense about anywhere from $9 to $10 million out to our community organizations for myriad of services that they provide to our community, from mentoring to educational services, health services, safety net programs, support networks, all of this good stuff. And that dropped down last year to about $3.45 million. And so that has an incredibly detrimental impact to many organizations who we fund to do this work for the community. And at the same time, we really had an impact on the community that probably we only had the capacity to do in our convening power and the relationships that we had in the community. We were able to start a COVID-19 relief fund. At the time, we were able to launch what was called 211, which is now our Greenville County resource line. We were able to create what's called Keep the Lights On profile, so that individuals could call us and let us know if they're having issues with paying their mortgage or their rent or any of their utilities. We were able to acquire a lot of the CARES Act funding to be able to help community members. At one time, we had, over 8,000 families in Greenville County who were in arrears in their utilities. So, anytime overnight, you can have large swaths of the community without access to electricity, students not having access to internet to do schoolwork, elderly people not having ways to keep medications cold, all of those things. And we were able to respond in a way that probably only our organization would be able to respond in helping our community. So there are so many good things to see out of what our organization does, even in hard times. And I think it just puts on display our ability to be versatile and still care about our community and find those innovative and creative ways in which we can be impactful.
Yeah, I mean, this time is very much unprecedented in some way. Although I will mention, I graduated from college at the height of the financial crisis, and that was another, oh crap moment, But we learned to adapt, and with these challenges, we start to realize new areas that we can actually help contribute to very meaningfully. And so, if there are no questions from the students in attendance, I just have one final question for everyone here, which is, What is the best resource to learn more about your respective positions and fields? Are you open to being contacted by students here? And if so, what's the best way to contact you?
Absolutely
I was-
open. Yep. Happy to connect. I think Steve's got my contact info. I think it's also listed on our website, which is wellspringliving.org. So I'm always happy. I actually just had a call yesterday with a Furman student who had some questions. In terms of my position, COO is one of those weird ones where it's an acronym that sounds vaguely familiar. It can look different, so different depending on the organization and the kind of scale or size or overall structure of the organization. So I'm happy to kind of talk through that. I think a lot of the best way to gain perspective on what that means and how to get there is through having conversations, meeting people and networking within the organization that you're connected with. Beyond that, being a student is the absolute best time to do kind of the cold call or the email. I'm not as active as I used to be, but LinkedIn is a great resource for me. I try to actually connect with people that I know from my career there. And so always happy to support and learn more about kind of each student's particular interests and path and questions so that it's relevant for them and not just like, here's the spiel.
Yeah, same. Best way to contact me is through email or LinkedIn. I check it often, and I've had a lot of networking calls with Furman students. It's something I wish I had done when I was a student. I did it as a graduate student, and it was really helpful, but I wish I had done it earlier in my journey. So I'm always willing to talk to folks. Steve can share my email. You can Google me, Kimball Dobbins. I'll come up. But yeah, I would love to connect with anyone.
Yeah, I would also love to connect with anyone. So if you through LinkedIn, you can also email me. Because I know myself, I also know that I hate email, but I will respond to your email if you email me. And the only reason I will respond is because if you are a college student and you take the time to actually reach out to someone and ask a question, that makes it super easy for me to reply. It makes it super easy. I'd be more than happy to see that email pop up in my inbox.
Great. Steve will have all the contact details to share. And then before we conclude tonight's event, I just want to mention that the Malone Center has one more panel up on the books that will take place on April 15th at 6 to 7 p.m. again. And the panel will be on real estate and urban development careers. And so I hope you can join us for that. But to our panelists tonight, thank you so much for taking the time to share your perspective. I mean, everything you said has been incredibly valuable. I know for me, actually, even as someone who plans to be in academia, so certainly for students who are in attendance right now or will watch this recording later. So thank you so much again, and thank you everyone else for attending. And I hope you enjoy what is apparently a beautiful day. I wouldn't know, but I will soon explore that.